Hi everyone, it's Miss Rossi here, and today we're going to talk about the Unit 8 review packet, and I'm going to walk you through any of the questions if you have any issues. So we'll talk about trigonometry, the whole unit, and get you ready for the unit assessment that you're going to have soon. All right, so what I want first is I want a ratio, okay, ratio fraction, for each expression. So the first one I want is the sine of A. All right, so remember our acronym. SOHCAHTOA. And if A is my angle that I'm referencing, right, that's my A, then I want to label my sides, right? So my hypotenuse, that's never going to change. So I can label my hypotenuse, right? This one right here that's next to it, this is my adjacent. And over here, the one way on the other side is my opposite. All right, so my sine, opposite over hypotenuse, is going to give me 15 over 17. My cosine of A then, right, my adjacent over my hypotenuse, so I'm going to give it an 8 over 17. And for a tangent of A, I want my opposite over adjacent, so my opposite over my adjacent, 15 over 8. All right, now when I do this again, right now when I'm talking about angle C, this stuff changes, right? So no longer am I talking about angle A. Now I'm talking about angle C. So now that's not the opposite anymore. This is now the adjacent. This isn't the adjacent anymore. This one's now the opposite. Hypotenuse stays the same. All right, so my cosine of C, so cosine adjacent over hypotenuse, 15 over 17. My tangent of C, my tangent, my opposite over my adjacent, so 8 over 15. And my sine of C, my opposite over my hypotenuse, 8 over 17. And remember that you kind of want to look at some relationships that we have here, right? Our sine of A and our cosine of C. Remember the same, right? Our co-functions there. My sine of C and my cosine of A, right? Same numbers. And then notice these two, right? They're reciprocals. Okay, so just things to notice about it. All right, number 2. Okay, so let's think about again our SOHCAHTOA. All right, and I want to find the value of x to the nearest 10th. Okay, so you do need to make sure you have a calculator ready. All right, so here's my reference angle. All right, so I have an opposite. I have a hypotenuse. That tells me I'm using the sine function. So the sine of 35 degrees, opposite over hypotenuse. All right, so I don't grab my calculator yet. All right, I'm going to cross multiply first. Right, remember, that's kind of over 1. All right, so I have 15 times the sine of 35. All right, so calculator. Now, make sure that your calculator mode is in degree. Okay, so I've got to make sure that that's in degree. All right, or else my calculations are going to be incorrect. They're going to be in radians, right? We talk about radians when we talk about circles. Okay, so I have, not 4, silly, 15 times the sine of 35. And there's my value right there. All right, that's my, okay, so I'm going to round that to the nearest 10th. All right, so x is, just to be clear, that's approximately 8.6 feet. All right, letter B. Okay, so here's my angle. I have an adjacent. I have a hypotenuse. Tells me I'm using my cosine function. So the cosine of 63 equals my adjacent over my hypotenuse. Now this time when I cross multiply, right, I'm going to end up with 12 equals x times the cosine of 63. Right, now, got to get rid of the cosine 63 on that side. Cosine 63, right, cross that out. All right, so now in my calculator, 12 divided by the cosine of 63 degrees. And there we go. All right, I'm going to round that to the nearest 10th. So my x is approximately 26.4 inches. All right, letter C. Here's my angle. I have an adjacent. I have a hypotenuse again. All right, so again, SOHCAHTOA. We've got our cosine function. So cosine of 24 degrees, they're always cosine of an angle, adjacent over hypotenuse, cross multiply 2 times the cosine of 24. Now notice I'm putting this number first. It's always a good move. That way in the calculator you don't have to put a parenthesis in at all. You don't need it. All right, so calculator, 2 times the cosine of 24. Right, I get about 1.8 millimeters. Approximately 1.8 millimeters. Letter D. Letter D. Oh, this time I'm solving for an angle. Okay, so remember this is a little bit different when you're solving for an angle. All right, I do have my adjacent. I have an opposite. It's the tangent function. All right, so the tangent of the angle x, we don't know what that angle is my opposite. Oh, silly. My opposite over my adjacent. All right, so now this is where I just straight jump to the calculator. I'm going to use the inverse tangent function. So I'm hitting second tangent, 13 over 9. And remember, I'm only doing this when I'm solving for an angle. And I get about 55.3 degrees. All right, that ends part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.